What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel. Andy here with the second part of our complete guide to Materia. In the first video we covered what Materia is, how we can get it, what it does for our party. I'm gonna leave the link to that video here in the description. In today's second episode, we're gonna cover synthesis. This is gonna be our primary source of new Materia, and it's a system that is not overly complicated to use, but is going to give us tons of heartache. That's because it is mostly based on luck. There's a few things that we can do to control the outcome though, so we're gonna look at all the details today. Alright, let's get started over here going into Enhance and then the Synthesis menu. Now, if you remember on the first video, we went over the different types of materia, how we have some magical, how we have some element associations like fire, wind, etc., and how we also have some physical ones. We're going to be able to create all of those types of materia here under this menu as long as we have the necessary materials. Now, I'm going to collect any one of these simply to free up a slot so we can start getting into the details, and this actually turned out okay. It's a magic ruin with heal percent and HP percent. That's not horrible. Now, the first thing that we need in order to synthesize any materia is the recipe for that specific materia. When you first go into this menu, you're going to notice that the recipes option here is going to be turned on. That means all of the materia that are displayed here, I have the recipe for, and I have the option to synthesize them. That doesn't mean that's all the materials that exist though. If I turn recipes off, we're going to get quite a few of them that don't say ready. That means I don't have the recipe, and I also know that I don't have the recipe because over here on the left, it says recipe not available. If I click on this button, it's going to tell me that this recipe is used to synthesize Quake Blow, but nothing else. It doesn't give me any details. Let's compare it to a materia that I do have the recipe for. When I click on water, which is just a basic magic materia, the game is going to be nice enough to tell me where I can find this recipe. So synthesis quest, materia synthesis water 1, when I head over to this menu, if I look at the rewards that this gives me, it tells me that on the first clear initial reward, I am going to get the recipe that we're looking for. All you have to do is beat the level, get the recipe, and you can start synthesizing that specific one. Now this recipe thing is going to apply even for materia that we already own. For example, healing is soon fatigue is one that we get throughout the story. The fact that it's in our inventory doesn't mean we can synthesize more. The recipe for healing Asuna fatigue still says not available. That means at a future date, hopefully they let us get it somehow, because this one, the darkness, would be really useful against the Tomberry right now. That Tomberry guy is something we're going to mention a little bit further ahead. But the bottom line is you're going to be able to start synthesizing, let's say the basic ones, but any advanced material they're probably going to release later. Alright, so now that we have recipes, we can move on to step 2, which should be planning. Planning is essential because there's a huge variety of materia, and when you add in the sigils, you end up with a requirement of probably dozens of different materia to have optimal teams. Now, in order to plan, we need to know how synthesis works, so we're going to circle back to that. Synthesis, in essence, is not overly complicated. You're going to have a bunch of different types of materia. Each recipe is going to ask you for different materials, and when you click on the materials, the game is nice enough to tell you where you can farm them. Hit the synthesize button, and for a small cost sigil, you'll be on your way to synthesizing a materia. This one, for example, a basic synthesize with no modifiers is going to cost us 5 of these flame ores and 5 of these magic chips. If I click synthesize, then this one that we're working on is going to go here into my slot 1. There's going to be a time that the game gives us for completion. In this case, it's an hour and a half for a fire, and when the synthesis is complete, since we didn't add any additional materials to modify the results, what we get is going to be completely random. It could be a 1-star, 2-star, 5-star. It could come out with 1 substat, 2, 3, or 4. Unless you modify it by adding additional materials, there is no way to guarantee what we're going to get out of this. The same is going to be true for any other recipe. It doesn't matter if it's here on the main tab, if it's here under one of the sigils. If you simply hit synthesize, you pay your materials over here on the left and your little bit of gil, you're going to get a random result. This means that you can start synthesizing in bulk, and you're going to have to. Fortunately, the basic materials are not hard to farm. There's dungeons specific to each one of them. Run a couple each day and you'll have plenty enough. The difficulty comes when we try to improve the quality of the materials that we're going to receive. Like I mentioned, if you simply hit synthesize, you're going to get anything from 1-star to 5-star with 1 substat to 4. If, however, before hitting synthesize, I come to the menu down here that says add materials, you're going to see that we have a whole bunch of different things that we can add to this recipe in order to improve the quality of the outcome. There's going to be 3 different levels, just purple, pink, and gold. Purple being the most common, gold being something I don't think we can get yet. But when I start adding any of these materials to the recipe, we'll see that the progress bar here in the middle of the screen is going to advance. When I hit synthesis level 2, the result of this recipe is going to be guaranteed as a 2-star materia. Doesn't mean it can be 3, 4, or 5, just that the minimum that we're going to get is 2. As I add more materials, let's say taking it to level 3, we're going to get a 2-star guaranteed, and we're also going to get 2 substats guaranteed. Substats are incredibly important, as we saw in the first video. The function of the materia itself does improve a little bit with level ups, but the substats are going to give our party a huge boost. Let's continue on then. If I add another another 2 of these, I'm gonna reach synthesis level 4. This gives me a 2-star guaranteed and also 3 substats. Now, for most materia, synthesis level 4 is the maximum that we can get to now. That's because we don't have the gold catalyst available and we can only add a maximum of 10 of the pink and the blue. There is an exception though, and it is precisely Ruin of the magical variety, where if we keep adding materials, we can actually get this to level 5. This guarantees us a 3-star rune with 3 substats. That sounds amazing, but it consumes an awful lot of resources, and as you can see, I don't have a surplus of them. I haven't used a lot of these yet, and still I only have 17 of the purples. Now, let's say I don't want to use those, but I want to use all 10 of my blues. The maximum that I can get to is level 3. That's a 2-star with 2 substats. However, you see how the bar is kind of halfway through level 3? There's absolutely no point in doing this. You might as well stop the second that you hit 3. That costs you only 5 of the blue materials, gets you a 2-star guarantee with 2 substats. I would advise this level of synthesizing for now, while the game introduces a way to also farm the gold materials, which could let us go to level 5 on all of them. Because let me show you another example. This is the Ruin magic, which we can take to level 5, but if we go to Ruin physical and we add materials, it doesn't matter how much we add here. The maximum that we can get to is level 4. For now then, I would save these purples, but there's no reason why you can't start using at least some of these blue ones for now. Take them to level 3, you get at least 2 substats. I've been synthesizing a lot, and guys, it's extremely frustrating. The vast majority of the recipes are absolute garbage. These blue ones can increase the quality a little bit, and they're easily farmable in these dungeons. Once we get to the purple, these can only be farmed in crisis dungeons, sometimes from chocobo expeditions, but it's completely random. You can exchange them with the crisis metal or co-op metals, but there's a limited amount. Do all of those exchanges as often as you can, but be very frugal when it comes to spending them here. As you saw, getting to level 4 takes a minimum of 3 of these purple ones. With my stock of 17, that's less than 6 materia that I could craft at level 4. Again, very rare stuff, don't misuse it. Now, we said that the second step in synthesizing materia was planning, and that's for a very simple reason, right? For most content, we have a party of 3. If we want to take advantage of all the elemental weaknesses, that means we're going to have at least 1 of each type of element for each one of our party members. There's 5 elements, 3 party members, so that gives us a total of 15 materia we need just to cover that area, and we're not even getting into sigils. There are 3 different sigils for 3 party members. There's also magical based and physical based. That means that just to cover all our bases, we're going to need 18 different sigil focused materia. And no, you can't simply go with physical. There are cases where you're going to need magical. The watermelon tomberry we have right now is a great example, because in difficulty EX2 he uses darkness, and there's no way that we can dissipate it at the moment. Darkness doesn't allow you to use physical abilities. That means that if you want to interrupt his big attack, you're going to have to destroy the sigils with a magic based one. If you only had physical ruins, you would be unable to do so and he would nuke you. That's why I said that the bare minimum that we need here is 18. 3 sigils for 3 party members of 2 different types. Does that mean you're just going to synthesize 18 total materia? No, you're going to synthesize hundreds of them and hopefully end with at least 18 good ones. This is where planning comes in, because if we start nilly-willy just synthesizing random stuff here, 1 there, we're gonna end up with a bunch of crappy materials where we have maybe 1 or 2 of each, and it's going to be almost impossible to select good ones to work on. In my opinion, my approach has been to do batches. For example, one day I'll do just Ruin Blow Circle. I'll synthesize a couple dozen of these because it's a pretty short recipe. I will then take all of the results, I'll head over to Enhance Materia, I will filter by the ones that I just created, which are going to be the circles. I just did that this morning, that's why there's so few of them, and I'm going to manually go over them and say, okay, this Ruin Blow, which is just 2 stars with 1 substat, and it's not even percentile, is complete garbage. I'm going to leave it unlocked. If I do find one that's worth keeping, then I'm going to lock it here. This is going to make it a lot easier for you in the future. When we get to actually upgrading materia, it'll be easy for you to know which ones you can sacrifice to upgrade the good ones. I recommend always doing this. Finish a batch of synthesizing, come here to enhance, and lock whatever you want to possibly work on in the future. It doesn't mean it's going to guarantee be a materia that's in your team, just something that you don't want to fodder right away because it has potential. That process is going to be repeated over and over again. So one day, for example, focus on those circles. The next day, focus on the circles, but maybe magic based, and then the next day on triangles, first physical, then magic, etc, etc, etc. Ideally, you would end up with at least 3 good ones of each type. Now, as for the timers we get when we start a recipe, I have been actually documenting most of my synthesis, trying to find a pattern, but it is extremely difficult. You could, for example, if you're trying to synthesize a Ruin Blow, you could end up with a timer of 30 minutes, which would usually indicate absolute trash. You could end up with a timer of 40 minutes, which gives you a 2-star with a couple of substats, or you could also end up with a timer of 40 that gives you a 3-star with 1 substat. What I was trying to do is build a model that kind of allows you to predict what you're going to get, but it's it's actually pretty mixed. There is no guarantee that with this set timer you're going to get something good. What is good to assume is that the longer the synthesis time, the better quality the materia is going to be. But even then, there are some exceptions. Sometimes you'll get a good one with a short timer, sometimes you'll get a crappy one with a long timer. And that's going to be it for today, guys. I hope this synthesis guide is useful. The main takeaways are that you're going to have to plan, get organized, kind of decide what you want to work on that for a little bit, complete it, and then move to something else. Don't try to synthesize all of the materials at the same time because you're going to end up with nothing. Also, conserve your resources. They're not particularly easy to get. The blue synthesis stuff you can farm, the purple you can only exchange for metals, and the golden one isn't even available yet. Good luck with your synthesis. Like I said in the first video, it's an area that's going to require a lot of patience. It can be very frustrating. Most of the time you're going to end up with really crappy results. Gachas are not a race. They're supposed to take time. We're supposed to take time to develop our teams. And even if you get into a sticky situation like I was with the EX2 Tomberry, you can quickly synthesize a couple of the materials that you need just to cover the need for that moment, and you don't have to power them up. A level 1 Ruin breaks sigils just as fast as a level 10. Yes, you don't get the stats, the ability doesn't hit as hard, but it accomplishes the mission of breaking the sigils and interrupting the boss. Start playing around then. We have one part left in this series, which is going to be how to upgrade material. Those resources are even more precious, so look forward to that. I'm gonna say goodbye for today. If you haven't already, please remember to hit like, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell so you don't miss any videos, and I'll see you guys again very soon. Bye!